So the governor is just freshening up. We do have some seats here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So snooze, you lose if you don't want to, you know.
Anyone want to come up and sit up here? Dave? Brianna? Carol?
Can you hold this, please? I think so, yeah. Probably, well, the water's going to be here, so I'll probably move it to the side so you can have the water. Probably do the water right here. Okay? Does that work? And is she gonna speak? Yeah, of course. Gail's gonna speak too. All right. Well, listen, another great turnout. I'd love to just give you an update on some things that are happening. Obviously, we're very excited to see, obviously, Doug and Catherine Burgum, the First Ladies of North Dakota, First Lady and obviously the Governor of North Dakota. We will be bringing them up in just a moment. I do want to introduce former Senate President Chuck Morse. Chuck is here running for governor. If you have an interest in helping him, go over and say hi and sign up for his team. Obviously, like I said, we do have some seats up here, guys. There's 3 right here. There's 2 right here. So, Harvey, come on up, man. Get a seat. You know, really, you need a seat, I think. Yeah, well, okay, there's a seat. So anyway, so we have obviously tonight, and then on the 4th, from 5 to 7 or 5:30 to 7:30, we have Vice President Pence, and then on the 7th we have Tim Scott about the same time, and then on the 11th we have Chris Christie, and then we have another one coming on the 13th. I'm just trying to wrap that up, and it'll be very interesting. Without further ado, Governor and Catherine Burgum, please come on up. Give them a nice round of applause. Governor, this is for you. He did this on purpose. He knew I would kick his ass in basketball. So, but really, I tell you, Governor, all my friends are jocks, as you can tell, right? And when we heard that you popped your Achilles and then showed up, like within hours, you get a real attaboy for that. That's really unbelievable. So let's give him a round for like stepping up. The old North Dakota way. Before I turn it over to your lovely wife, I'd like to turn it over to Gail to say hello and welcome everybody. Gail Huff Brown.
Oh, which one? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We are so pleased that so many of you have shown up, and many of you have come to every single one of these. It's so important that we get a chance to meet the candidates and look them in the eye and ask them questions, and more importantly, hear what they have to say in their life story. So we're honored to have both of you here in New Hampshire, and welcome. That's all I can say. Welcome.
Thank you. So just the format, there are some new folks here. The format is basically, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Burgum first. She's going to do an intro. You all know, I know, I watched the debate. Obviously from a small town in North Dakota, 300 people. I've been a working class family, a working man his whole life, to the point where he wanted to be in charge. So we started a business, I don't know if it's millions or billions, but it's a big ass company. And he hires a lot of people, and he does a lot of great work, obviously, not only for North Dakota, obviously the governor, they're doing a great job. So I'm going to now turn it over to Mrs. Burgum. Come on up here in the hot spotlight.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it. Hey, we are so grateful to be with you all tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Well, hey, you did a great job at the debate. with only one minor injury. So that's awesome. Well, Doug's been a incredible leader in the private sector his whole career, really, before he became governor. And, you know, when he came home one day and said, I want to get in the governor's race, I looked at him and I thought, okay, where is this coming from? Because it's kind of out in left field. And then he saw the look on my face and he said, you know what? Here's the situation. It's only 5 months until the primary. Our opponent is a sitting attorney general. He's been in that job for 15 years. And his family has about 100 years of name recognition because they've been in politics practically since statehood. And, oh yeah, there's one more thing. And he's ahead by 60 points in the polls. So we'll just see how it goes. Well, 5-6 months later, we won that primary by 20 points. Yeah. And then he came home and said, I think I want to get in the governor's race. And we had a lot of conversations about that. Sorry, the president's race. How about the Senate race? I don't know. Anyway. Yeah. So
I'll tell John.
Yeah, so we had a lot of conversations about that. But, you know, when I became First Lady, I decided that I would tell my story about my struggle with addiction and my recovery so that I could help eliminate the shame and stigma of addiction. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years, and we've been working on that together. And we've made a huge amount of progress in our state eliminating stigma, and it's really a state effort now. And then when he said, you know, I'm thinking about the presidency, I was, of course, initially like, oh, okay, wow, you know, that's a huge decision. But the biggest thing for me about deciding to get in the race was what we could do at a national level for behavioral health, how we could bring people together to really focus on creating more services, eliminating, you know, the 110,000 overdose deaths we have across our nation, and how we could work together on that and make a huge difference. And so I said, you know what? I'm all in. I'm all in for this race for president, and I will be behind you and be your partner 100% of the way.
That's great.
You know, Doug really cares about people deeply, and he really wants to improve every American life, and he really wants to unleash the best of America. So please help me welcome my husband and the next president of the United States, Doug Burgum.
All right. Good job. There's a seat right here, please. And Governor, I'm just going to move this center you so you can, you know, chillax a little bit. The water's right here, okay? Just the format, Governor, so you know, you make a presentation when you say, Scott, I'm ready to go. I have a wireless. People are going to raise hands, so start thinking of questions. I'll go, and we'll just go until you say we're done.
Okay.
Pretty simple. Good luck.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Gail.
All right, cheers.
Let's give it up for our host. Fantastic job these guys are doing here tonight. And I also want to thank Catherine, her courage to share her story, be the face and voice of recovery against this brain disease of addiction has been so powerful, and it's not just changing lives, it's saving lives. So I think if we could, let's give it up for the most courageous First Lady in the country. And Catherine, John said this is for me, but this is actually a John Deere stool. And Catherine's family, she grew up in the John Deere business, and so she grew up sweeping floors and mowing lawns and working in the parts department, along with her sisters. And I used to say that the business was really built on a business model where young farmers that didn't even own John Deere equipment would all come into the parts department to buy parts. So that was a anyway, it's great to be with you tonight. As Catherine said, we're grateful for all of you being here. We're especially grateful to the people in New Hampshire because you play such an important role. It's so powerful to have folks like you that come out to events like this and then keep coming here and meet every candidate. It's so important because the role of being the first primary state, you're really at a time when there's so much misinformation, so much limited information in a world of sound bites and social media. where divisiveness sells and leadership and policy gets buried and left in the background. Your role is becoming more important than it ever has been in any other year. And so I just want to say I'd like to have all of you give yourselves a hand for being here tonight, giving your time. It's your most valuable asset on a Friday night. Thank you for being here. And as Scott indicated, I grew up in a little town, Arthur, North Dakota, 300 people, a great place to grow up. My dad was a World War II Navy vet. He was, before they had kids, Pearl Harbor happened, and he went down the road to Castleton, 15 miles away, and he signed up to join the U.S. Navy. And he had a college degree from North Dakota State. And in those days, if you had a college degree, they had a program called 90-Day Wonders. You go to the Great Lakes Training Station, Naval Station, 90 days later, you're a naval officer. As fast as they could build destroyers, they were putting young men on those boats. He'd never seen the ocean before. I don't think that he knew how to swim. And he joined the Navy, and he went off and didn't see mom. They were apart for close to 2.5 years during that time. And they fought their way, as you know, in World War II, all the way to Japan. In one of those, final battles at Okinawa, there's 151 destroyers there, and 129 of 151 were hit by kamikazes. They were protecting the aircraft carriers. My dad was on one of the ones that didn't take a hit. And it's only by the grace of God that I'm even standing here with all of you. But I grew up with a father where I understand what service and sacrifice is about. And that generation, not just him, but all of those folks that sacrificed. One half of the MIAs in our entire history, going back to the Revolutionary War, missing in action, one half of those are U.S. Navy World War II sailors that went down in ship after ship after ship. And so I think about that, and it matters today, and we can come back to that when we talk about what's going on in the Pacific. But my mom, she was amazing, and my dad passed away when I was a freshman in high school. So there's my mom, who's a stay-at-home mom, going back to work, raising 3 kids. And I learned about perseverance. I learned about grit and character. I learned about, hard work. I learned about somebody who said, I'm not going to let barriers get in the way, as she pursued her career then for 34 years after Dad was gone. And that was a huge lesson for me to have two. What a gift to have 2 parents like that. But every job I had growing up then, and I understand working mothers. I understand people that are trying to, make a mortgage on a single salary when you got 3 kids. But I also, growing up, I worked at the farm, I worked at the ranch, I worked at the grain elevator. I worked even as a chimney sweep to pay my way through college. I loved that job because I was looking for something where you could move up fast and always stay in the black. Boy, I'm glad there's a few people that get a dad joke in this group. That is really nice that you have that. But it was also, I was an entrepreneur. Minimum wage then was like $1.75 going to $2.35, and I could get $40 for sweeping a chimney. And when I got good at it, I could get it done in an hour. So when you get a job where you can make 20 times the minimum wage, think of that today. I was like paid like a plumber. It was like it was fantastic. It is a great job, and we're putting a lot of energy into career and technical in North Dakota today to help make more folks like that. But so I had inherited from my dad, in North Dakota, you need thousands of acres to do dry land wheat farming. And I know there's a few folks, Gales from South Dakota, you understand it takes a lot of land in a non-irrigated area, but I had 160 acres was it. That seems like a lot in New Hampshire. It's like nothing there. It was literally not enough you could farm on. But I did the thing that you're never supposed to do. I took out a mortgage against that farmland that was paid for by my grandparents and my dad and mom, and then I took a loan against that. That was the seed capital for a little startup called Great Plains. And we started with less than 10 people. We built that into a 2,000-person organization. We had customers in 132 countries, hundreds of thousands of customers. We had partners all over the world. Our number 1 partner in the entire world was in Manchester, run by Dan Taylor, who's standing right there. I see him. Look at that. And with partners like Dan, who built successful businesses, they employed people, we were employing people. Our customers, we were in the business of helping improve the lives and business success of our partners and customers. I've always led powerful mission-driven organizations. We're running for president because we know that with our purpose, we can improve every American life. Absolutely. The executive branch, one of the great honors of being the governor of North Dakota is that every day, Catherine and I get up, and every day we can do something that's going to make a difference in somebody's life. And you don't hear that about politics because all you hear is the noise, but underneath that, the signal. I mean, this is service, and it's with a heart of service that we're pursuing this, and we know we can make a difference. But what's the challenges we're facing right now? Well, we have big problems in our country, and it's not about the quality of the people or the amazing communities, because I know what small towns, I know what's going on in here in New Hampshire. Neighbors help neighbors. There's inspiring stories every time I turn around. There's small nonprofits that no one's ever heard of that aren't getting a dime from the government that are making a difference in people's lives. There are great things happening that none of us ever hear about, but I know it, I see it, we hear about it, we ask about it. But what we do know is that the Biden administration is pursuing a path on the economy, energy, and national security, and those three topics are completely interrelated, inseparable, always have been. They just need a course correction, like a little bit this way, a little bit that way. No, we need a 180-degree turnaround on where we're going. We've got an economy that's crawling. I know how to get it sprinting. I've been making payroll every 2 weeks since I was in my mid-20s. I've been signing the side of the check, not cashing it. I've been the one writing and paying that. I've been there where I've had to take a pay cut or eliminate my pay to make sure I can keep paying team members. I understand what every small business owner is going through right now, and I understand that under Biden's policies, inflation is killing this country. And people say, oh, it's just, it's this and that. Inflation is the most corrosive thing that can possibly happen. It doesn't just cut into people's wages, it steals your savings. It takes away your savings. This is what I worked my whole life, I saved it, and then all of a sudden that money that you put away is now worth less than it was 2.5 years ago. The average family is paying $700 more a month for their basic needs now than they were when Biden took office. $700 a month, that's $8,400 a year. Who's got that? Think about what happened to their savings. Think about that. And now Biden's telling you, oh, Bidenomics is working. What's working? Oh, the inflation is slowing down, they say. Inflation slowing down is the same as saying, hey, prices are rising less slowly. If you didn't feel good about your 20% pay cut last year, you feel good about your 10% pay cut this year. At least it's less of a pay cut. But that's what's happening. Interest rates at their 22-year high. And then hidden in the back pages on page 18 about 2.5 weeks ago, the U.S. debt was downgraded. You all know what happens to somebody if if their credit rating gets reduced, that you pay more when you're borrowing money. And so what's happening in the U.S. when we got a record, we're in the 30s of trillions of dollars of debt, an all-time high. We have that. So all of our children, all of grandchildren, we don't have any yet, fingers crossed, maybe. We got one married, but maybe. We'll have one coming soon, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. Have you heard anything? I haven't. Okay. I haven't heard anything, but anyway, yeah, okay, but we have what we understand, for generations to come, they've got to pay that down, and right now we're going to cross the threshold we've never been. The interest on the federal debt now is going to exceed what we pay for our entire defense budget, the entire defense budget. One of the biggest items in the thing is then going to be, the interest is going to be more than that. It's just unsustainable. And we've got a couple of reasons why inflation is so high. And let me just start with one of them, which is red tape. This administration has surpassed Obama not through passing laws, but through executive orders and administrative rules coming down from the EPA. Here's the new set of rules. Here's this, here's that. Here's the waters of the USA. Here's the Clean Power Plan, whatever. And I can tell you, I've seen red tape as a small business person. I've seen it run global businesses. And I've also seen it now as a governor. And as a governor, you've got a front row seat because this stuff just slides out and some people don't even know it's happening. And in North Dakota, we fight back. We spend millions of dollars suing the federal government. We won on the waters of the USA. That's illegal. There's a certain set, when I say it's illegal, the federal government can't make laws just through administrative rules. They can't tell states what to do. And you know why? Because of the 10th Amendment. In the 10th Amendment, it's 28 words, it's one sentence, and in there's an important word in the Constitution. It says delegated. The powers delegated to the federal government. Delegated by who? Delegated by the states like New Hampshire that created the federal government. And it says, if it's not specifically delegated to the federal government, it's reserved exclusively for the states, and importantly, comma, to the people, to the people. We need to make sure that freedom and liberty is what our party needs to stand for. It's what we have to fight for in our country. And the way you take care of a bloated federal government, and everybody says it's bloated, we'll shrink it. Okay, there's never been someone running for president before who actually spent their entire business career, and not like, oh, for a few years. I'm talking my entire business career was related to software companies that helped take cost out and improve operations. That's what I did. That's what all the companies did. Cloud Mobile, B2B, well, you name it, whatever I've done in the last part of my career past, Great Plains. That's what we're doing. We got into North Dakota, and here you get into a state like North Dakota or the federal government, and guess what? Because there's not competition for the monopolistic things that government is doing, they never get better. There's no pressure. There's no pressure to say, we've got to improve our services. We got to lower our prices. We got to do it more efficiently. There's 2 million federal jobs. I have people that are saying they're going to cut, the 4 million jobs in the department, or they're going to cut the Department of Education. Department of Education is 4,000 of the 2 million jobs. Okay, it's 1/5 of 1%. Okay, 1/5 of 1% is the Department of Education. Okay, I'll cut that too. I mean, it's like, raise my hand, great, gone. But we've got a bigger issue, the 2 million jobs. In those 2 million federal jobs, I know this from at the state level, inside of every job, you've got somebody who cares about, they went into government probably because they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to have a sense of purpose. They wanted to do something. And in their job, they've got 15 to 20% of what they're doing is some mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that bureaucratically they have to do that adds value to none of you and none of us. And it could go away and they'd be happier and you'd all be happier. And guess what? We can get rid of not 4,000 jobs. I think we can get rid of not 4,000. I think we can get rid of 400,000. Get rid of 400,000 and still be doing the job better than we are today. How many of you, well, thank you. And as a simple test, I'm sure that everybody here and every one of your family members, almost to a number, has got a smartphone. And I'm a smartphone, a modern phone, pick your brand. It's a supercomputer. It's got 1,000 times more storage and more computing power than what we had on Apollo missions that went to the moon. I mean, every one of those devices is just incredible. They each contain like 20 different sensors for speed and altitude and temperature and, time of day and all. They're just all incredible things. We just take them for granted. Everybody's got one. And then everybody's got 50 to 100 apps. And when we were campaigning in North Dakota, when this explosion was happening, I'd say, how many people have a smartphone? Everybody's hand. I said, how many of you have an app from the state of North Dakota? No hands. How many of you have an app on your phone from the federal government? Why is that? Why is every business in America tapping into the fact that we've got the greatest network power touching almost every citizen, everybody of 18 for sure in this country? And then guess what? Because we basically have got no IT at federal government. We have nobody doing cyber. When we got into North Dakota, the first thing I found out was we were under attack every day, and we still are as a state, from Russia, from China, from Iran, from North Korea. They all pay people to go to work to attack our state. They attack our cities, they attack our universities, they attack our high schools, they attack our tribes. They were even attacking, trying to get into our missile defense system, because the North Dakota National Guard has that as a permanent military assignment to protect the 150 missiles that we have. United States Air Force missiles are defended by North Dakota National Guard. They were in a school system, the North Koreans in a 200-person school, that's 20 kids per class, K through 12, trying to get at the parents' email addresses on their home computers to try to break into our nuclear defense. And guess what? You call the Department of Defense and say, we're being attacked by North Korea. And they're like, sorry, we're short like 10,000 cyber personnel at the federal level. Good luck. It's like there's nobody to call. So we have built the strongest cyber defense. We're helping neighboring states. We're doing this, but I'm just telling you, I could spend the next, you wouldn't want me to, but I could spend the next hour giving you examples of how far behind government is of where it should be. And not some ideological pitch, just telling you from an operations standpoint, common sense, small town business guy, here's how we would get it done. We know how to get it done. We cut $1.7 billion out of a $6 billion general fund in North Dakota, our first 4 months in office, 27%, Never's been done. Every train still left on time. We cut 27% out of a general fund. And we can do this at the federal level as well. And so we have such a big opportunity. So and we have 10 million jobs open in America. It'd be great. If no one would be unemployed, we could get those people working back in the private sector. So all the economic policies the administration are wrong. Quickly, I'll talk about energy. But we should be selling energy to our friends and allies, not buying it from our enemies. We're doing it exactly the wrong way. When we had this crisis here a couple years ago, Biden was going to the Middle East. He sent a State Department to Venezuela, a country that has completely fallen apart, has no EPA. 7.5 million people have fled Venezuela because of the government that they have right now, many of them trying to cross into our country. And they went and asked them to produce more energy. They didn't ask Governor Abbott in Texas or Governor Stitt in Oklahoma, Governor Gordon in Wyoming, Governor Gianforte in Montana, Governor Dunleavy in Alaska, or myself in North Dakota. They didn't go to the top 6 energy producing states and say, hey, could you help us out? We need more energy. No, we were going to our adversaries and asking them to produce more. And then I'm on the stage the other night, and we spent, 15 minutes? Should we spend more against Ukraine, less against Ukraine, bigger than a bread box, little and a big? It's like about Ukraine. And, and it's because it's the narrative. It's like the big issue. Here's the real question to ask. Why did Russia invade Ukraine? Why did they feel that Russia could invade Ukraine? Why would they feel that they could just walk into a democracy that was our ally and just do that? They did because our deterrence didn't work. When Biden pulls out of Afghanistan and leaves that country, when all the signals were go ahead and we may not do anything, and then guess what happens? The price of oil shoots up. Russia makes bank for the next 6 months. They're just raking it in, high oil prices they're producing. Putin gets a cut of that. This isn't a country like a president of a country. This is a mob boss who just took out another mob boss this week. He's a mob boss who gets a cut of all that. The Wagner Group, Burgum, that was killed this week, possibly. But a plane went down. They have 65 shell companies, the Wagner Group. When they went to help out in Syria, they got 25% of the oil production. When they went to help out in the Central African Republic, and I say help out, meaning send mercenaries, they took over 200 square miles in the Central African Republic, the biggest gold mine in the country, and all that gold is going back to Russia. So we have to understand who we're dealing with. They should have never felt that they could make a move, but how did they feel they could do that? Because why? Because all of Western Europe was getting energy from Russia. So he could move in unopposed and knew that no one could do anything. Winter, guess what? We can't cut off our energy supply. So why aren't we developing, and if you care about the environment, the Biden administration wants to shut down energy, and I'll tell you right now, all of you are paying too much for your you can't get natural gas. You're paying too much for your heating oil, you're paying too much for your electricity, and you're paying too much for you putting the gas in your car. If you want to beat inflation, topic 1, economy, fix the energy policy. Because at the time when Russia invaded Ukraine, this country was importing 400,000 barrels of oil a day of Russian, mostly dirty heating oil, into New England to heat homes. I think New Hampshire has the highest percentage of any state in the country. 41% heat their homes with heating oil. Why is that happening? They're happening because New York and the federal government, the state of New York and the federal government will not permit a natural gas pipeline from Pennsylvania up here. They can't get we have abundant, clean, cheap natural gas. If you really cared about the environment, you'd be out there helping install that pipeline. You'd be saying, if you cared about global stability, you'd be helping install that pipeline. And we'd have one from the West Coast, from the Bakken going to the West Coast. We'd have one from the Permian because the same issue is happening in Los Angeles. We have a national security threat because people think they're saving the environment. And what we're actually doing is causing our allies to make different choices. Japan has told us, leaders in North Dakota, if we had a pipeline to the West Coast, they'd buy all the liquid natural gas from the Bakken that they could buy for the next 20 years. Catherine and I were over there in a trade mission in October. North Korea shot a missile over the top of Japan while we were there in a meeting with one of the largest Japanese trading companies. I've been in a lot of business meetings in my life. I've been in a lot of global business meetings with large companies. I've never been in one where the other people all start talking to each other, and then we ask the interpreter what's going on. They're like, there's a missile coming. You're like, okay, that's interesting. So we've got a situation there where Japan, which has got 126 million people living in the space of North and South Dakota, has got zero oil production. They're importing all their oil and gas from the Middle East, and they're like, wow, China now got the world's largest navy. They could cut that off. That's how we beat them in World War II. Yes, we fought island to island, but our submarines sank every oil tanker coming in there from Sumatra in the Middle East. That's, you beat a country by cutting off their energy, and they're worried. They're worried. So you know what they're doing? Japan is stockpiling Australian coal in the ground. It's not helping the environment. And meanwhile, China's opening up a coal plant every 2 weeks. They're adding more coal plants than we can shut down in this country. And if anybody, I drive around here and I know we've got federal subsidies for solar panels, fantastic. If that solar panel was made in China, it was made in a plant that is operated by coal. If you're buying a battery for an EV station that's subsidized by the federal government, an EV car and an EV charging station, all paid for by $1.2 trillion of highly inflationary ideological spend to try to say we're going to save the environment, that battery is being made in a power plant in China, powered by coal, and the rare earth minerals are being torn out of Africa, they're being torn out of Indonesia to make that. And I'm not a little bit, they call them rare earth for a reason, because they're measured in parts per million. Sometimes you have to move 500,000 pounds of earth to get enough material to build one battery, and somehow the Biden administration has got everybody under 30 convinced that if you do that, you're saving the environment. If you care about the environment, you would demand that every ounce of energy, every electron is made in the United States, because we make it cleaner, safer, smarter than here. And if we did that, it will lower everybody's prices, it'll help the environment, and it'll stabilize the world. That's what we've got to do. So that's energy, national security. I can get into more during Q&A, but I would just tell you this. National security starts with energy security. It starts with food security, and it starts with border security. And I'm happy to talk about that because I just got back from the border 2.5 weeks ago. But I want to say again, for those of you that are here tonight to learn more, we'd love to have you go to dougburgum.com. Catherine and I thank you and our team for you being here. We thank you because we understand that the issues that we're talking about, we understand them deeply. We understand how to fix them. We understand how to lead, because I know from the private sector, you don't get stuff done by yourself. I've been accused of saying, hey, when you're running, you got to start saying I. You're running for president. You got to say, I'm going to do this. I'm so stuck in we mode because my whole life, I know I never built a business unless it was we. It was our partners. It was our team members. It was the rest of the leadership team. I tell you one thing I will say, I know how to attract talent, because if you want to attract talent to work for you, you've got to make sure they've got a clear mission. You've got to make sure that they've got the agency to be able to do their job. They have to know that they're supported with the right resources and the right equipment to actually be successful. And then they have to know that when they're successful, they're going to get the recognition. Someone's not going to take it from them. I have always operated in a way where leadership is about getting it done. It's not about who gets the credit. And that's why you can look at it. Somebody, if you want to check out my business record, go check it out. But there's not just one success story in there. There's a dozen of them in there. And they're all go back to that core principle of leadership. That's something that we know that we can bring. I don't think anybody should be president of the United States if they haven't worked in the private sector, and all the better if every job they had growing up was one where you took a shower at the end of the day versus the beginning of the day, and even better if they're from a small town, because what this country needs right now is small town common sense values to fix these problems. They're all fixable. We know how to do them. So thanks for being here tonight. I look forward to taking questions.
Thank you, Governor. Why don't you sit? Sit. Well, thank you, Governor. So as one of the hosts here, I'm going to take a couple of questions, if I may. So I was down only 41 points when I ran, and I won by 7 or 8, so I get it. And so congratulations on that. And I've done many debates as well. Enjoy them thoroughly. I thrive on them. And I was wondering what your impression was of being in your first national debate with a national spotlight, with the rules being flexed a little bit. What are your thoughts about the debate the other night?
Well, first of all, we were excited to be there, and there's a lot of, genuine concern. When you blow your Achilles completely and rupture it, 28 hours before a debate, some people are like, hey, you're going to be able to stand up for 2 hours? But that afternoon, when we went through the walkthrough, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to stand for 2 hours, I started thinking about. I did, like I said, been out at the border. I'd been down there with our troops. It was 107-degree heat, and we've got 6 million people across that border illegally. They're down there doing their job. They're flying helicopter mission from San Diego to the Gulf Coast at night, trying to stop transnational criminal organizations. They're doing it under those conditions. And then in Fargo, we got everybody's like, got asked the question the other night, at the debate, how do you solve the problem in big cities? The cities that are having all the issues with the crime, are not enforcing the law. They're defunding their police, and they want to pass gun laws. I guess what? So that when the police are gone, then people can't defend themselves. I mean, it makes no sense on that thing. And then in Fargo, we had a police officer. It's rare in North Dakota, but we lost a police officer last month, and then 2 others were shot. And I thought, those guys out there doing their job, all the friends, family. I got friends from high school, from grade school, from college, from the fraternity, from my first business, from business partners I've known for 30 years that are all, have stepped up. They're volunteering, they're helping. And I said, there's no way. In North Dakota, we got a phrase called cowboy up. You're injured, put up, shut up, go get the job done. And so I was not gonna miss the debate, do that. So then we're out there, and you asked the impression. There was 2 different debates, the one that you guys saw on TV, and then the one that was in the arena, and they were kind of 2 different things, and it'd be interesting to, I haven't watched it, but I know that we had part of our team was watching it on TV and part were in the arena. It was like they went to 2 different things, because in the arena, no crowd control, so I think even for some of the folks on stage, it was hard to hear the questions that were coming because of the crowd noise over the top, so that was interesting. And then obviously there was like I said, noise versus signal. There was a ton of noise, not just from the crowd. There was noise going on the stage where we wouldn't talk about signal. And I got interviewed by Hugh Hewitt this morning, who's on Salem Network, 200 radio stations. This guy's moderated multiple presidential debates. He's been, the president of both the Nixon and the Reagan Library. And we did one segment on radio for 15 minutes. And he said, well, Governor Burgum, we'll see you after the break. But I do want to say, we've now talked about important national security issues more than the entire debate last night, and I'm like, yes, we have. Thank you, Hugh. And we have here probably as well. So I think it's not, we call them a presidential debate, but let's just say what they are. These are business models. These cable TV stations, their ratings are dropping. They run on clicks. They've got to have controversy or no one's going to tune in. And so if you understand the business model, you know what you're up against. I mean, I just got to say, I've always been in the policy and leadership business, but to win one of those debates, you got to get in the entertainment business. That's a field I haven't been in, but I learned quickly.
All right. Good for you, good for you. So, I'm going to go through the crowd, so please, I have one back there with Dan, and then just raise your hands, but I did have a further question. So the next debate, the standards are going to be raised higher in terms of donors and percentages and national polls. So what's the plan to make it to the next stage?
Well, we've crossed every hurdle in terms of donors, in terms of state polls. We got one left, that's a national poll, and I will just tell you we'll be there. And so count on us being there. We're going to be there, but these are clubhouse rules that were made. I've never complained about them, never said a word about the first ones, but if you're including a national poll, it actually erodes the power of Iowa and New Hampshire. Voters are supposed to decide who moves forward in this thing, not some TV poll. And so it's and you get a startup campaign like ours. We started on June 7th. We have more days between now and the first caucus and primary than we've had since we've launched. So we're literally just getting going. These rules favor people who've had national office. They favor people who've held national office, who've run for national office, who've been on television as a pundit, or have worked, maybe as a governor in a large media market. And so they absolutely favors that, because those folks have got national name recognition. So to get our national name recognition up, we're going to have to bump up national TV advertising. That doesn't help, us build relationships here in New Hampshire. It doesn't help us build stuff in Iowa, but we'll get it done. But they're forcing the rules of the game to, and again, this is one thing that's wrong with our country, is the federal government, the Biden administration, think there's a one-size-fits-all for everything. And when you do that, you don't get the great ideas that occur in every locale. If we're going to return power to the states, we need to do this. These rules are actually taking power away from the states and then moving it towards cable TV networks and national polls. I don't think it's positive for the thing, because I believe in competition, and competition is good for the Republican Party and it's good for this country. And we know that by us being in this just for the 6 months, or no, 3 months, not even 3 months, right? 3 months will be in a couple of weeks. The 3 months we've been in this, if you look at what the other candidates were saying back before June 7th, what they're saying now, more of them are talking about the economy. More of them are talking about things that matter to American people. More, I'm talking about inflation. I didn't hear, we've been saying energy dominance for 2 years, and it was in the first sentence that came out the other night. So I'm happy that we're moving the Republican Party towards the things that matter to people. So, but to do that, you've got to have those voices in the party. But we're not running. I'm not selling a book. I'm not running for vice president. I'm not running to be a cabinet leader. We're running because we know that we can do the job of the President of the United States. I know that when we're in the White House, that we will have a focus on doing the job that we're supposed to do, which is the federal job, not the state job and not the local job. And when we do that job, we'll attract amazing talent, we'll execute, and we will improve every American life. I'm as confident as if I've already started in the job. I know that's going to happen.
Governor, I'm right back here, okay?
Got Scott Brown, our roving reporter, out there with a.
Governor,
Hello, sir.
Governor Dan DiMatteo, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And Gail and Scott, thank you so much for having us all. My question for you, before I worked in real estate, I worked in scientific research. I was educated by a professor at Harvard Medical School one time that less than 10% of our human genetic DNA determines our hair color, our skin color, and our eye color. Why is race and skin color widely discussed all across the country on a daily basis, considering it's less than 10% of our genetic makeup? And what are you going to do when you become the president of the United States of America to bring us together and unite us as a country? Thank you.
I appreciate the question a lot, and the answer, I don't know if I have a good answer for why it's discussed. I know that it doesn't matter, and I know that to Catherine and I, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter. We live in a state, North Dakota, which in the 1880s, the only people that are there was about five Native American tribes, 150 years ago. We were populated by immigrants in our state. It was an economic development pitch. Let's get Norwegians and Danes and Swedes to come here. Let's get Germans who'd been pushed out of Germany into Eastern Russia. A lot of them from the area that Ukraine is. Then they got pushed out of there, and then they got pushed to North Dakota. And then now, we went from the state that was the only state in the nation that was smaller in 2010 than it was in 1930. We're the only state that actually had less population 80 years after 1930 to one of the fastest growing states of the nation. How do we do that? Because we had new Americans coming from all over the country, because we had economic opportunity. We're the highest GDP of any Republican-led state in America. We're actually booming and sprinting in our economy. That creates opportunity for everybody. And for our tribal members that we work super closely with, when we were campaigning, we went to the tribes. We had 5.5 months to that primary, and we went to one of our tribes and we said, we want to meet with everybody. And we got there, and they didn't know us, and they're very quiet culturally when they don't know you. And then somebody said, well, we think you're going to lose. And I said, well, everybody thinks we're going to lose. We're way behind. And he goes, no, I think you're going to lose because you're spending a day here with us, and we don't vote for Republicans. And we said, well, when we're elected, the executive branch, we work for everybody. Enrolled members in a tribe are still citizens of North Dakota. Your kids are going to our public schools. You're driving on our roads. And when there's a blizzard in North Dakota, we don't say, oh, we're going to plow the roads for the Republican primary voters that voted for us. No, we plow the roads for the independents and the Democrats, and we do that. We do it for everybody. And so, our focus is thing. And when I saw this, when I I grew up in a town that had gravel streets and no computers. And we built a $1 billion global software company. Not once. I've been involved in 4 of those. And I've had people working for me in these 132 countries. I've had people working for me that didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have the right to assemble. They didn't have the right to free speech. They didn't have the right to, have that thing that we called a political debate on Wednesday night. You couldn't do that in their countries. I know what freedom looks like. And I know that it doesn't matter what economic level you at, what country you came from, what the color of your skin, what your background is, or whether you were here before the United States, before the first, folks came to across the ocean to get here. I know that everybody has something in common. They want to have better opportunity for their kids than they had for themselves. They want to have good education and safe schools. They want to have communities where they can thrive. They want to have economic opportunity. They want to be able to spend time with family and do things that they love, and they want to be able to have access to the things that are going to allow them to have a great life. That's common all over the world. That's common all over the world. And so I don't get why we talk about it all the time. I don't, and I'm thrilled that they got rid of affirmative action, which, I mean, you know, that Supreme Court decision, I applaud, because that affected like, what, 0.2% of students in the nation? Because, you know, I'm telling you, North Dakota State, we run 11 universities in North Dakota State. I mean, across that, we fund 11 universities across our state. That was never a criteria, you know, coming to one of our schools. So, you know, if elite universities were trying to do something, I don't know, it didn't seem that smart to me. So I think we're slowly maybe inching back towards we can move on into this thing. But I appreciate the question. But I know that we're, you know, at least when we're in the White House, we are. It's absolutely we've got to focus on what is common about all of us, what brings us together, and that's, I think, pretty simple. When you've got the experience I've got, and you've seen people around the world, and you know what they have and what they don't have, it just comes naturally to all of us.
Governor, right here.
Thank you. Excuse me. Governor, my name is Bob Thorne. I thank you for being here, and I commend you for talking about the Constitution, because I don't think half of Washington, D.C. knows what the Constitution is. So my question is this. If you are elected president, how do you feel about zero-based budgeting and actually only funding programs that are constitutional?
I think that's a great idea. A lot of people don't understand what zero-based budgeting is. When we came into North Dakota, part of you said, how, you know, it's a great question. No one's really said, how did you take $1.7 billion out of a $6 billion budget? There was, in government, both at the federal level and the state level, here's how it works. The culture of an agency is, in that agency and their leadership, the folks that, you know, sometimes get called the deep state, if they get more money than they did the last time, they're all winners. If they get less money, they're losers. So the whole momentum of that organization, like trying to, you know, get to the Super Bowl, win the game, everything about these agencies is, we need more money, you know, because they think that they need more money to you know, pay themselves, do whatever, do the whole thing. There was never, you know, it would be crazy if we were getting together, and we're all a group of CEOs and business owners, and we're all together having a little get together, and then you said, okay, oh, who spent the most on sales and marketing? You know, and someone raised their hand. Oh, you're the winner. No, it's not. No, who sold the most? Not who spent the most on sales and marketing. What you sold is an output. You know, what you spent is an input. The whole focus of government is input, input. We need more inputs. We need more for this program. We need more for that program. I listen to these shows, which I don't really listen to, because there really isn't anything for me to learn. I don't sound arrogant, but you could watch these shows, you know, these cable networks around politics and government and policy all day long and not actually learn anything that would help you actually do the job of being a governor and taking costs out of government, because they all are talking about the wrong stuff. Nobody talks about outcomes. Everybody talk, oh, we need this, they're cutting this budget. You know, let's have a thing. Nobody's gonna cut this or cut that. We gotta agree, we can't cut it. And when they say cut, sometimes they're talking about a slightly lower increase. I mean, it says the words don't even make sense. So it's like, you know, it's one of the challenges is the way my brain sees this stuff is we have to focus on it. So what we did in North Dakota, and we've done it now in every budget cycle since we've been in office, is we don't start with the budget. We start with strategy. We zero base it. We go, what is this agency supposed to do? What is the mission? Okay, if that's not part of the core mission, we get rid of it. You know how happy the employees are? They're like, well, I mean, we don't have to do it. We passed 51 out of 52 red tape reduction bills this year in North Dakota. We're just cutting and cutting and cutting away the stuff that's non-essential, that's not part of the state constitution, that's not the job. If somebody can do it locally, great, you know, and even if you just say we want to spend the same amount of dollars, block grant it to a local community where they can decide, as opposed to having a one-size-fits-all for the whole state, because guess what, you know, Fargo is very different with, you know, as our largest city than Arthur is, the 300 people one. So even in a state like ours, I know one size fits all. So strategy drives budget, not the other way around. And when you do that, magical things happen. And there isn't a business in this country that doesn't have strategy drive their budget. But the government budget always drives strategy. And if the budget isn't big enough, they go, we need more budget. And then everybody's like, oh, I guess they need more budget. No, they don't need more budget. They need to actually have strategy. And at the core of strategy, what we always look for is innovation, not regulation. we get together in the governor's office practically, I mean, like put our hands in a circle, and then we, ready break like a team. We go innovation, not regulation. And we fan out, and everywhere we look, where can we solve a problem with a new solution, and where can we get rid of an old regulation? Because regulation is backward looking, and the federal government, when they try to put a regulation on agriculture, energy, when they try to do that in our state, when they do that, by the time they say, oh, there's a problem, we got to fix it. Oh, there's methane leaking from that thief hatch on an, oil tank. So we're going to spend 2 years making the rule, then another 2 years, codifying it, and then 2 years, socializing it, and then they're going to implement it, and then they're going to hire a guy in a pickup, and probably a guy in a pickup, driving around with a clipboard to check on, all these different sites. And then meanwhile, Moore's Law has happened, 5 times in 8 years. Moore's Law is where, the power of a chip doubles in power in half the price, that you could, before they actually get the guy in the pickup out there, we've got an automatic reporting tool that's digital, that requires no people, and it's more accurate, it's timely, it's continuous, as opposed to one person in a pickup driving by every 6 months. And it drives me nuts, because part of every regulation is we're going to hire humans, we're going to give them clipboards, we're going to replace the clipboard with a computer, and then they're going to go collect data, because we're going to solve this problem. And it's like, if you want that data, then digitize it, and put a chip on that thief hatch and find out what's actually going on, and have continuous. And so we have done this over and over and over and over again. Crazy rules on stream monitoring. The Department of Environmental Quality is trying to shove down on our state. And then we came up with a $500 device that's solar powered, that we can stick in a stream that'll do the measurement continuously. Okay, for $500, you can barely fill up your tank, for sometimes, for that, to get the guy with a clipboard to go out there to do one measurement a summer, and we're doing it round the clock. So it's like, there is so much opportunity. It's not like a little bit of cost out, it's like a complete reinvention of what we're doing. Innovation drives regulation, and it tops regulation, but right now it's the other way around. We crush innovation. The way we beat China in a Cold War is we grow our economy. The way we grow our economy is cut the red tape, innovation. We've always succeeded as a country with innovation. Think the Wright brothers, think Thomas Edison, think of the computer chip, all of the stuff that's happened in our country that's raised the value of everything in our country, the quality of life that we've had, and globally, the biggest gift that we've given to the world is 1 billion people in the last 20 years have been risen out of poverty because of free markets and innovation that came from the United States. We are helping the world without sending them one dime of government funds when we're innovating, because our innovation gets exported. China steals it, but a lot of people pay for it. But that's what thing. But love your question.
Governor,
Thank you,
right
sir.
here. Governor, there's some water right there in that thing for you if you need it. Dan?
Governor, thank you for coming tonight. Our oldest is going into kindergarten in a week and a half from now, about 30 minutes south of Massachusetts. And so now education is kind of at the forefront for us. What are your plans when elected to, one, reform the Department of Education, and two, hold the teachers unions more accountable and create more transparency for the parents?
Well, this is one place where I do agree with some of the other fellow candidates, and it seems like an easy one, because the Department of Education was only created sort of in recent history. It's not been a long part of the federal government. 4,000 employees, very few, about $68 billion in cost that goes in there. Some of that cost can get cut. The rest of it, block granted without strings attached back to states. In some equitable fashion. That's how you would do that, and then drive it back, because like in North Dakota, we have 175 school districts in North Dakota, and the responsibilities of those school boards, and a lot of parents have stepped up and run for school board. I mean, one of the great ways to make sure that parents have a voice at the local school is not the federal government passing a rule that's going to work for every one of the hundreds of thousands of public school districts in this country. It's going to be with local control making that happen. And so we've got to get the federal government, it's got to return the power to the states. States got to be smart enough to move it back, like we have in North Dakota, down to the local school districts. And from the union standpoint, this is a problem, and it's a problem when I talk about ideology being tied into regulation. It's not just school districts. Governor of North Dakota, it's a fantastic job, but you have to work like a dog, because you're not just the governor, you're also chairman of the Industrial Commission, chairman of the Land Board. The Land Board's the largest landowner and largest mineral owner in the state, and you're chairman of the Water Commission. The Water Commission, is in charge of over $1 billion of water projects. And again, North Dakota is the size of all 6 New England states. So think of, we got to be solving the problem for all that. And you're the chairman of the Bank of North Dakota. And the Water Commission, we had a project, and then this goes back to your question, and Biden, in inflation and local control and unions, it's all tied into one thing, is they said, hey, we've got federal money. Here's this stuff we're going to give you that's going to really help you build infrastructure. So we get the bid back to finish a water plant for a project that had federal nexus to move water across our state, and the bid went from 35 million to 65 million. I said, that's crazy, because even when we're doing highway stuff, the inflation was only up 30%. Why is it up 100%? And they said, well, because of the new rules. And I said, what new rules? Well, the rules are that you could only buy from union labor in the United States, and you could only buy from American countries. And it's like, sounds great, buy American. Turned out, no American company made the precision pump required to do the water filtration to move water from the Missouri River into the Surrey River Basin. It was a German company, an ally of ours, but if we wanted the federal money, we couldn't use the German company. There were some other parts we needed from Canada. So, so then this project, what are we gonna do? Pay 100% inflation and then wait 4 years for this project? Or are we gonna serve the state of North Dakota right now? And so then we're pushing back on these kinds of rules and saying, look, we don't want the federal money if it's not saving anything, it's driving inflation, it's driving stuff up, and it's those things are ideological. That's not serving our citizens if nobody in the country in here makes it, but our allies do. So anyway, with the unions, they've got too much power and too much clout with this administration, and of course he's pandering to them left and right. It doesn't matter, teachers unions, whatever union, and it's a fraction of at a time when we've got 10 million jobs open in America, and you say, we need to protect workers. No, anybody that has got a skill can get a job in any community, in any town, in that skill set, anywhere in the United States. Why would you need to give part of your salary, to a union, that is ideologically driven to do that, versus actually just saying, wow, as a free person, I can take my skills and get a higher paid job anywhere I want to. Because that's available right now. I mean, if you've got a career in technical education, if you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a CDL driver, you can pick the town in America you want to work with, and there's going to be a job available. I don't know what the role unions are playing or who they're saving from, but I'll tell you what happens in places like Chicago, where they get involved and then they drive elections because of the power that they have. So they're driving a political agenda. They're not driving a labor agenda.
Governor, right here.
Right there, Scott? Okay, thank you.
Hi, Governor. I want to address a question that relates to national defense. Just so you know, when I was flying in the Navy, I flew with a couple of guys named Knutson, not related, from North Dakota and Montana, one of whom spent 7 years as a guest at the Hanoi Hilton. What I want to say is the way you keep enemies at bay is through fear of the consequences if they push them. When I was flying, we had 15 carriers, capital ships in excess of 500. When my youngest was flying, we were down to 11 carriers and just over 300 capital ships. We're now down to 9 carriers and less than 300, and we're headed south. We can't even maintain our inventory of armaments, and our ability to recruit young men and women to serve has fallen off the radar screen. Maybe you could address your view as to how we approach that problem.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, sir, for your service. And is there anybody else here that, if you're a veteran, raise your hand if you're standing, and stand up if you're not. But thank you all for your service. Thank you. Your question was so articulate. We talk a lot about how Reagan won the Cold War. We're in a Cold War with China. There's a certain set of things we have to do diplomatically, information-wise, military-wise, and economic-wise to win a Cold War. But when Reagan did that in the 1980s, we were spending 6.5% of GDP on our military. Today, we're spending 3.5% of our GDP on military. And the Biden administration said, oh, we're giving the military a raise. Well, the raise they were giving was 2 or 3% less than inflation. So we're actually defunding the military when you fund it less than inflation, because the military's got to buy gas. That raised their cost. They got to pay people. They have to do all this other stuff. So we're actually in a bad spot, and then what you described, and then continuing to decline it. Part of it we've got to get, when we get our economy going, we've got to get a higher percent of GDP. We've got to rebuild our military base, both in the private sector as well as in the military, because the way that we deter war, it's so much cheaper. If there's fiscal conservatives in this room that understand how it works the way we understand how it works in North Dakota, if you want to have peace through strength, you have to have strength. And the way you have strength is you actually have real deterrence. And it's the failure of deterrence, as I said earlier, the failure of deterrence is what led Putin to move into Ukraine. And I just feel like we are green-lighting a Taiwan invasion. We're absolutely green-lighting it, because if we say we're going to give you Harpoon missiles that can sink Chinese ships in 2026, if you're advising Xi, what do you say? You don't say don't invade. You say, no, go now. Let's go. 24, 25. We got to get there before the Harpoons get there. When we talk about stuff like that, as opposed to saying they're coming as fast as we can, we're transferring them tomorrow, or better yet, we send them and then we tell them, oh, by the way, we just got 100 Harpoon missiles already in Taiwan. That's a deterrent. But we've got to rebuild. And then in North Dakota, coming out of high school, another education question, which I'll ask myself, but you say, why aren't people choosing military? We said in North Dakota, the education system, it's the biggest thing that is a state. The decisions are made locally, but the state is funding almost 80% of that. So we said, hey, if we're going to help fund locally, we ought to have a say. Here's a goal that all of you are held to, an output, choice ready, not career ready, choice ready. So if you're a high school senior in North Dakota, you've got to come out of school and you've got to be able to do at least one of three things. You've got to be able to be choice ready for the military, which means you could pass a military exam, either the physical and the academic test, to be able to do that. You've got to be able to get into one of our colleges, or you've got to be able to get into one of our career and technical education. If you don't want to do any of those three, that's fine, but you've got to be choice ready, because all three of those are excellent choices. If you go to the military and if you go career and technical, guess what? You're not going to have student debt, because any company today that takes you will offer to pay for your school. And this whole idea that we got $1.6 trillion of student debt out there that Biden wants to forgive, which will be the largest, he's trying, and he tried, it failed, he's trying again. These are the largest political payoffs in the nation's history, because they exceed what Biden was doing, not Biden, what Obama was doing with student loans, where they took the caps off of this and they just let it run. I mean, this debt, you can draw a line and see, when did student debt take off? It took off when Biden said, not through a law that Scott Brown would have not voted for, but through orders that they put out that said, we're going to raise the caps for grad school debt unlimited, no cap. Boom, just takes off. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to make it easier to access all this stuff. That's where you run it up. And then, what we're going to do, we're going to take kids that went to college that took out debt that aren't paying back their debt, because where I grew up, your word is your honor, and if you borrow a dime from someone, you pay that dime back. You don't just like, hey, we're going to do this. And what do we have? We're going to do that. But then the kid that went to trade school and got a job and is doing that, then he's got no student debt. But the one that went to college and doesn't have a job is not paying taxes. So the guy that the trade school, the blue collar guy who's paying taxes, is going to help pay for the debt of the college kid that picked a career. I mean, it is super unjust, and it's super political. And I understand what it's like to be in debt. I've been in debt in parts of my life when we were building businesses and we were struggling. I get that, but we've got it. We're not going down that path. And then the Biden administration says we don't have enough money to do the military. Okay, we don't have enough money. How is that possible? They wanted to add 87,000 IRS agents. When I was down at the border 2.5 weeks ago, I said, how many law enforcement do we have on the border around the United States? 19,855 people in law enforcement and the Border Patrol. And they wanted to add over 80,000 new, 4 times the Border Patrol we're going to add to the IRS to go chase all of you, as opposed to fill the positions that are there that we aren't filling. And so if it doesn't start with the top, with the President of the United States respecting the people in the military and understanding that's priority, why would a young man or woman go into the military if they don't feel respected? And as Commander-in-Chief of the North Dakota National Guard, which is the most important and the biggest honor of being a governor of state, we were getting ready to have the memorial service for the 20th, the 20th of the 9/11, the memorial anniversary. So September 11, 2021. We're getting ready. Biden decides that he wants to withdraw from Afghanistan so he can somehow, I don't know to who, claim political victory by saying we pulled out, we ended the war, I guess was going to be his battle cry, that he ended the war before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We only had like 2,500 troops left in Afghanistan, and we had, the country was stable. He pulls them out in this disastrous thing. You know who we were going to have that memorial service with? The 29 Gold Star mothers who lost, North Dakota National Guard men and women lost their lives serving in the war on terror, including in Afghanistan. That's who we were meeting with on September 11th. And 2 weeks before, we see the U.S. retreating out of this whole thing, and those mothers came to that ceremony and said, did our son die for no reason? Because this president seems to think that it didn't matter what they did and when their service over there. And this is not like for them, it's not just like, oh, it was a bad foreign policy decision. This is unforgivable. And why would a kid decide to go in the military if they think the commander and the chief doesn't care about the people that are serving?
Governor, right here. We have, first of all, it's 7:21. We're going to take one or two more questions. Okay, so here's one, and then we have one right here.
Game doesn't start till 8:15.
Who's playing tonight?
The Patriots are playing a preseason game.
And who are they playing?
Tennessee Titans.
Okay, well,
So
go Pats
It's only preseason.
on that one.
Um,
I was just checking. As long as it wasn't some teams I do cheer for, but.
all right. Thank you for coming. I live in Rye, undeclared voter. Glad I came tonight because I learned a lot more about you than I got out of the debate from you the other night. Our oldest son, been coming to these, can't be here. He wanted to thank you for the $20. He took his friends out and all got ice cream. Going back to the
Tell him thank you for helping us get on the debate
no,
stage.
He believes everyone should have a right to be on the stage. So one of the things from the debate that bothered me a lot was that with the whole fentanyl thing, yes, keep it from coming across the border. No one's going to argue with that. But I really liked what the First Lady said. How come no one's talking about cutting down demand? You get rid of the demand, it's not going to come over. So I'd like you to do more about that. The other one is you brought up the debt and some of the energy things. My biggest peeve is that we have more in common as Americans than we have against. We've got the parties with the woke, driving us to fight each other. We've got serious problems. You brought up the debt. Bowles Simpson, nonpartisan, this is what we do. The political parties didn't have the courage to do what it takes. I actually learned a little bit from the debate and you about energy. I hear a lot from the younger generation around climate change. Why can't we get together and have those discussions? Because I don't think they understand and bring up the points you brought. And listening to them, they're incredibly frustrated when they hear some of the candidate here saying, and on the debate stage, that climate change doesn't exist. We have to come together in the middle. What will you do? I like the we, to get us together and get over this partisan mess so that we can start solving our problems and stop fighting.
Well, the reality is the majority of Americans are in the middle and they want solutions. And I think that it's why we're seeing fewer and fewer, and I think even in New Hampshire, the people that are unregistered is now the largest segment. It's larger than either edge. And it'll likely only increase as people keep driving to the edge. So we have anybody that wants to actually govern and get something done has to be able to know how to build solutions. And so everything you just said, we agree with you completely. And happy to talk more afterwards. We've done so many innovative things in North Dakota relative to serving and making sure we can take care of people who are in recovery. And guess what? It's the moral thing to do, that's the right thing to do, because it's a disease, but it's also the fiscally right thing to do. Because when we take a look at the criminal justice system across our country, and you take a look at it in a state like North Dakota, where we spend $500 million in a little state like ours on criminal justice, 100% of the women who are incarcerated have a substance abuse disorder. And you're like, wow, what's the matter with those women? Nearly 100% of them were a victim before they became a criminal. Almost 100% of them survived some kind of childhood trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse, something that led them to be a user, which then led them into brain disease, which led them to, breaking a law, which led them to incarceration. And then if we spend $45,000 a year on incarceration, men, it's about 80% that are in criminal justice system, and I think that's statewide. As a governor, I've appointed more judges than any other governor in history. We had 33 governors in North Dakota. We've had a shorter history than New Hampshire, but since statehood in 1889, appointing those judges. When I'm interviewing to appoint these 17 judges I've appointed, we always have a discussion. We've always got 3 to 5 candidates. I ask of all of them, I said, how much of your job as a DA, as a prosecuting attorney, as a defense attorney, as a judge advocate, as a, working in the court system, because that's how you get up to be nominated, is you've spent some time there. And I say, how much of your job is related to the disease of addiction? I've never had an answer below 80%. So take the entire criminal justice system in most states, all of that is going towards the disease of addiction. This is a hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billion-dollar problem. 30 million people in our country, not to mention the 300 that are dying every day, from the disease of addiction. And if we had 300 people that died in an airplane crash tomorrow, we'd all be shocked. Then the next day, 300 died. You'd tell your kids, don't get on a plane. By the third day, we had 300 people that died. Then we'd be like, okay, we're all screaming at our elected officials, do something. And by the next week, no one would be flying and everyone would be demanding, all up to the president, we need a solution. But when that's a statistic, because that's how you get to 110,000 people a year, is 300 a day. And we have lost, since Biden took office, we've lost the equivalent of 4 Vietnams, heading towards 5 Vietnams worth of deaths related to the disease of addiction. And we spend $4 trillion in healthcare in our country, and almost none of it on the preventative side, on the front end, on the services they need to help people steer out of there, or when they get into the criminal justice system, then they come out, they recidivize, they're right back in again. And we've developed amazing diversion programs that help people there. And guess what? They're driven by capitalism. We have people with lived experience. They've been in jail. They've been trapped in a disease. Now they're out. They become a peer support specialist. They get paid. They get reimbursed. And if the people that they're serving, 4 or 5 other clients coming out, if they help them get a job, they help them get a driver's license, they help them get a place to live, those are the social determinants of health that keep them out of going back in the system. If they do that, we pay them even more. And we had a state like ours growing, we couldn't get any addiction counselors to come to our state. And you couldn't definitely come to the West during the oil boom. We now have 800 peer support specialists. Virtually all of them are felons, and they're doing a better job than the traditional medical group at keeping people out of jail, because they've been there, they can relate to them, they can do that, they're saving lives. And a lot of that started with the First Lady right here, so thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Last question, and then what we'll do, since we have a little bit more time, just come on up, give me your camera, we'll do a picture. Happy to do that for you. And just a reminder, the next one is going to be Vice President Pence on the 4th from 5:30 to 7:30. Then obviously Tim Scott on the 7th, and then Chris Christie on the 13th, all around the same time. 11th. Sorry, my bad.
Governor, thank you for coming. My name is Joe Torelli. We fled your neighboring state, Governor Mount St. Tim Walz, about 3 years ago to come to New Hampshire and Minnesota. People ask, why did you move from Minnesota to New Hampshire? And I said, it's warmer. And they kind of look at me and they go, oh. The thing that I'm very upset about, something that wasn't asked during the debate, was what's happening to this. And I have my silver certificate. Oh, wait, it's not a silver certificate, it's a Federal Reserve note. What wasn't captured at all or discussed at all on Wednesday night were 2 acronyms that I think are very important to the future of this. And I'll say them out so that we don't have to figure out what it is: the central bank digital currency, and then what's going on with BRICS right now with Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia. Where are you on that future of the US dollar, and what, as president, will you do to protect it or eliminate it? Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. This is a really important question, and it doesn't come up, and I don't think a lot of people understand it. In my long career, one of the things I was invited to do was to sit on a Federal Reserve Advisory Board back in the 1990s. Had a chance to serve at a time when Alan Greenspan was still involved. Went to National Advisory Board thing, and I said, we're from around the country. I'm a young kid, single, starting a software company, been battling, we've been bootstrapping for 10 years. We're trying to build it. We're saying, the venture capitalist said, we'll invest in your company, but only if you move to Silicon Valley. Like, we're building our company here. Good ideas can be anywhere. We've got kids from 220 small towns in North Dakota. We're not moving. And there was no capital. So I went to them, and you go to the bank and say, can we get a loan? And they'd say, no, we can't, because you have no assets. Because everything that you make comes out of the minds of your team members, and it gets expensed. So you pay software developers, it's an expense. But now I have an asset called software that turns out it was worth a lot, but it was zero on the balance sheet. So I'm trying to explain to Alan Greenspan that the accounting systems in the United States are completely wrong. They're not reflecting a culture. I mean, they're not reflecting a new level of innovation around the products that we were creating, which were intangible, like software, that had enormous value. But when I would go to the bank, they'd say, show me your balance sheet. And they look at their balance sheet and they're like, you're bankrupt. I'm like, no, we're not bankrupt. We're actually the fastest growing company in the whole state, actually in the whole region. We're actually crushing it. So we had a spot when we were growing, we could not get a loan to buy personal computers to write the code, but the printer that was printing our documentation in Fargo, Night Printing, bought a $4 million 4-color press from Germany, and they got a loan like no problem, because guess what? Their business was going through the roof because our business was going through the roof, but it showed up on their balance sheet. So I'm trying to explain to Alan Greenspan that our vendors can get loans who are prospering because of our enormous, incredible success, and we can't. And do you know what he said to me? In front of a whole group of people, 24 people on advisory thing, and then a room full of advisors, Alan Greenspan said to me, young man, he goes, you sound like a lobsterman trying to get a loan in Kansas City. I think you should move your business to Boston or San Francisco. And talk about hitting my start button. Man, I was like, nope, we're not moving. And now I've heard it. I've heard it from everybody in Silicon Valley. I heard it from there. Now I've heard it from the head of the Federal Reserve. So there have been things broken for a long time in terms of how we think about capital in this country. And the real risk we have right now, you'll be surprised, ties back to economy and energy. Because these transactions where Russia is selling their oil to India and China for the first time ever, up until now, every oil exchange in the world went through the US dollar. If it was going from us to some other country, they would convert their currency into the dollar because oil was priced based on the dollar worldwide. So now if it's unhinged from the dollar, now I can pay in Chinese yuan. That's the beginning of the end of us having a reserve currency. If we don't have a reserve currency where other countries are buying our debt, which we're running up, then the party is over. Officially, ring the bell, it's closing time. The way we've run this country, which is just keep printing money to cover us spending more than we're bringing in, then that's over. Because the only way we keep escaping this thing is because of the strength of the dollar. And guess what? In the Constitution, one of the jobs of the President of the United States, one thing that's prohibited from the states can't come up with their own currency. When the states got together, they agreed, we're going to have one currency for this country. That's the federal job. Guess who's not doing that job? The Biden administration. So when I'm president, we'll be focused on what the job is, and that job includes national security, includes the economy, includes understanding that we manage our money correctly, we preserve the value of the dollar, because chewing it up with inflation is one thing, but the fact that we're actually destabilizing it worldwide because of the way we're running energy policy, people will wake up one day and say, what happened? I don't want that to happen. And that's one of the reasons why we're running, because we understand how this changing economy works. We understand how the world works. We understand how government can be shrunk. And we understand how to build teams to get that job done. And we can have this nation safer. We can have a brighter future. And we know we can improve every American life. So thank you guys for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
All right, give it up for the governor. Thank you, Governor. It's been a pleasure and honor. Great job. So what I'd like to do is, let me take this from you. Hold on. Why don't you sit down and rest that leg? It's going to be the size of an elephant soon. So if you have a picture, you want to come up real quick, just come on up and give me a camera. I'll grab some pictures, and thank you very much for coming.